She was lost in the canyon, surrounded by towering rock walls far away from the familiar trails. Sarah had always loved hiking, the thrill of discovering new places, but this hike was different. She had thought she could conquer this trail easily, unaware of the hidden dangers lurking around every corner. A few hours in, the sun was high, and she felt the warmth on her skin. The beauty of the canyon was captivating. Stripes of red and orange painted the cliffs above her, as if the earth itself had weaved a tapestry of colors. With each step, she felt more and more alive, but as she rounded a bend, she suddenly realized she had lost her way. Panic gripped her heart. She had no map and her phone had no signal. She tried retracing her steps, but the landscape morphed and twisted like a dream where nothing feels right. The shadows began to stretch, and with each passing minute, the sun started its descent. The sounds of nature, once music to her ears, turned into the echoes of her isolation. Birds stopped chirping and the rustling leaves felt menacing. As the light faded, the canyon transformed into a different world. The pretty reds and oranges became shadows of despair. She sat on a rock, trying to catch her breath. "Okay, think," she said aloud. Talking to herself was the only way to hold back the rising tide of fear. She remembered her father's advice from when she was a child. In tough situations, focus on what you can control. She took deep breaths, inhaling the earthy smell of the rocks around her. Then she thought of her gear. She had a small flashlight, a water bottle, and a granola bar. It wasn't much, but it could help her survive through the night if she had to. "You can do this, Sarah," she whispered. But as darkness enveloped her, the reality of her situation pressed down like the weight of a boulder. Night fell quickly in the canyon. The air turned cold and an eerie silence hung in the air. Every rustle, every whisper of the wind felt like a warning. She flicked on her flashlight, illuminating a small patch of the ground before her. The beam of light danced nervously, revealing rocks and dirt, but no sign of salvation. Anxiety crept back in as she realized how far she could be from help or even the next person. Suddenly, a noise echoed in the stillness, soft but unmistakable. It was distant, like the call of someone in the dark. Her heart raced. Was it a person? Could it be rescuers? She stood up slowly, trying to listen closely. The sound grew louder and hope flickered in her chest, battling the heavy weight of fear. As she carefully made her way towards the sound, she held her flashlight in front of her. The words seemed to dissolve into the void, swallowed by the dark, but the sound persisted, getting closer. Then out of the darkness emerged a flicker of light. At first it was just a spark, but it soon blossomed into a soft, warm glow, a lantern. A man stood before her, silhouetted against the brightness, his face obscured but his presence undeniable. He called out, his voice steady and calm, breaking through her panic like a knife through fog. Tears welled in Sarah's eyes. "I'm lost." The man stepped closer, illuminating his face. His expression was one of concern. He looked like someone who understood desperation. "You're not alone anymore. I'll help you find your way out," he reassured her, his voice soothing. As he approached, Sarah felt the tension drain from her body. The lantern's light was like a beacon, guiding her through the dark shadows that had overwhelmed her. The warmth of hope returned, wrapping around her like a reassuring hug. "I'm Tom," he said, holding the lantern high. "I thought I could manage the trail," she explained, her voice shaking. "But I got lost." Tom nodded, understanding reflecting in his eyes. "Happens more often than you'd think." With the lantern lighting their path, they began to walk, one careful step at a time. As they moved, Sarah felt a new energy coursing through her veins. With each flicker of the light, her fears began to fade. They walked in silence for a while. The only sounds were their footsteps and the gentle crackle of the lantern. Tom asked, breaking the quiet. His voice was warm and inviting. "I love discovering new places, the beauty of nature, the quiet." "It makes me feel connected, alive," Sarah replied, smiling softly as she recalled her love for the great outdoors. Tom smiled back. "It's easy to get lost in the beauty." Sarah nodded in agreement, feeling the truth of his words. As she walked beside Tom, she felt a sense of camaraderie. They were stranded together in this vast canyon, two unlikely souls brought together by fate. She asked, trying to ease the seriousness of the situation. "I was camping just nearby. I came to see if I could find anyone who might need help. I heard some voices and figured I wouldn't ignore it," he said, glancing sideways at her. "Definitely lucky," Sarah said, her heart swelling with gratitude. Tom chuckled lightly, but then his tone turned serious. "Just remember next time, always let someone know where you're going." "I will, I promise," Sarah vowed, knowing even the smallest details mattered in the wilderness. As they continued along the rocky path, the canyon began to shift again. The walls seemed less closing, the space opening up as they walked. Whispers of hope danced in the air. The lantern's glow created shadows that stretched like friendly giants, guiding them home. Suddenly they reached a higher point where they could see the lake glowing under the moonlight. The silvery light shimmered like diamonds on the water. "That's where we're headed," Tom said, pointing towards the shimmering surface. As they reached the edge of the lake, the beauty of the night took Sarah's breath away. The stars hung like lanterns in the sky, and the moon illuminated the water like a giant mirror reflecting their shared journey. Tom stopped to take a breath, and Sarah looked at him in awe. "Thank you for being my light in the dark," she said sincerely. He looked back at her, and there was a moment of understanding, a connection forged in adversity. We all get lost sometimes, Sarah. It's part of life. They lingered near the lake for a moment longer, feeling the calm wash over them. To Sarah, every troubling thought, every ounce of panic felt like a distant memory. She felt stronger and more alive in that moment than she ever had before. As they walked back towards the trail, the lantern in Tom's hand brightened the way, showing her that even in the darkest places, there's always a spark of hope waiting to be found. After what felt like an eternity, they reached the familiar path that led to safety. "It's hard to believe, but we made it," Tom said, his voice echoing with relief. Sarah turned to him, tears mixing with laughter now. "I can't believe it either. No need for all that." "Just remember to take it easy next time," he said, affectionately nudging her shoulder. As they reached the parking lot, the anxiety of the day melted away. Sarah turned to Tom, the lantern's light still flickering between them, a symbol of the bond they shared. "Maybe we could go for a hike again someday." Tom's smile widened, a sense of companionship blossoming. "I'd like that. Just remember to keep a map this time," he replied with a chuckle. With a final look back at the canyon that held so much fear and joy, Sarah felt a weight lift from her chest. She had been lost, but now she had found not only her way back, but also an unexpected friendship that would last well beyond the wilderness. The canyon had tested her, but in the end, it was also a place of discovery, reminding her that sometimes you must lose your way to find what truly matters. She sat on the edge of the precipice, the vast canyon beckoning below her like an open mouth, ready to swallow her whole. It was hard to believe only a few days ago she was surrounded by her friends, laughing and planning their next adventure. Now Sarah was utterly alone, lost in a labyrinth of rocks and shadows, with night creeping in faster than her lungs could breathe. The canyon had once seemed like a playground, a grand wilderness filled with possibilities. But now the vibrant colors of dusk faded into deep blues and blacks, warping the familiar into the unknown. The vastness of the sky above felt like a weighted blanket pressing down on her chest. She could feel despair curling around her ribs, squeezing tighter with each passing moment. There was a chill in the air, sharp against her skin as she pulled her jacket around her. She had expected a simple hike, just a day out in nature to clear her head. But the canyon had plans of its own, twisting trails that seemed to change direction with each turn. One wrong move, one overlooked signpost, and she had become a ghost in its maze. Time felt like a stretch of endless darkness. She had been wandering for hours, her heart raced each time she glanced at the flat battery icon on her phone. She hadn't seen another soul since she lost her group, the terrifying reality setting. No water, no food, and now the sun was dipping below the horizon, leaving her vulnerable in a hostile world where every rustle of leaves whispered of lurking danger. Panic threatened to steal her breath away. "Calm down," she murmured to herself, hoping her own voice could anchor her. But her body was tired, and her mind was slipping into a fog of exhaustion and fear. Every scuff of her shoe against the rough terrain felt like a reminder of her plight. Shadows danced along the walls of stone, taking shapes that made her heart pound louder. Did she hear something? A snap of a twig, the low rustle of a creature in the underbrush. She strained her ears, hands clenching into fists at her side. Alone, lost, and frightened, she was an unwelcome guest in this ancient land. As the sky turned inky black, she finally stumbled upon a small ledge. Sarah settled onto the cold rock, hoping the weight of her body would keep her from floating away into the abyss of fear. She pulled out her flashlight, its beam barely piercing the darkness. She was hungry, thirsty, and desperate for a plan. She closed her eyes and thought of her family, imagined their faces, their laughter, something tangible to hold on to. Once again, time slipped away. Hours could have passed, she couldn't tell anymore. She wondered, picturing him guiding her through this exact scenario, offering practical wisdom. With her parents' words echoing in her mind, she decided she couldn't just sit there waiting for rescue. She stood, forcing her legs to move, and began to search for higher ground. The flashlight flickered, and she gave it a firm shake, hoping it wouldn't betray her. The darkness felt alive, wrapping around her like an unwanted cloak. Each sound made her jump, a rock falling, an animal skittering away. Was she being followed? The thought crept in uninvited. Isolation can play cruel tricks on the mind, making every whisper feel like a threat. "You're stronger than this," she whispered to herself, summoning resilience she didn't know she had. Just when despair tried to pull her down again, something pierced through the heavy dark, a flicker, a gentle glow far away. It beckoned like a moth to a flame and filled her heart with a spark of hope. "Dreaming," she called, her voice tremoring with uncertainty. There was no answer, but the light remained a promise of companionship in the endless night. Sarah moved toward it, each step igniting a glimmer of faith. She stumbled over rocks, limbs pushing aside thorny bushes. The closer she got, the more palpable the heat felt, warm, inviting. And then, just as she rounded a bend, she spotted him, a figure standing with a lantern illuminating the darkness around them, a guardian in a vast sea of terror. He asked, his voice deep and smooth, cutting through the tension surrounding her. Tears burst forth unbidden. "I'm lost," she managed to say, overwhelmed by the sudden release of fear. "I've been wandering for days." He stepped closer, the soft glow of the lantern revealing a rugged face, his expression steady and kind. "You're not alone anymore," he assured her. Relief washed over her, so overwhelming it brought a wave of emotion. "Thank you," she breathed, as if mere words could encapsulate the weight she had been carrying. "I'm Tom," he said as he held the lantern high, the light casting a warm glow between them. Sarah told him her story, how she had lost her group after getting caught up in the beauty of the canyon. Tom nodded, his eyes never leaving hers as she spoke. It felt good to share her fear instead of letting it fester alone in the dark. "This canyon can be tricky," he said, his tone serious but gentle. "It disorients people. You did nothing wrong." They began to walk together, the lantern guiding their path as if it were a beacon against the deeply ingrained shadows. The warmth of companionship filled the air between them, a sense of safety growing. Tom's presence was solid, a calming anchor in this tumultuous sea. What struck Sarah was how she felt no longer alone. The night, once oppressive, began to feel adventurous again. As they traversed the rocky terrain, Tom shared stories, moments of his life that lightened the burden of fear. "I once got trapped in a storm while hiking in the mountains," he admitted, a soft smile playing on his lips. "Felt like I'd never see daylight again." During the journey, Sarah found herself laughing, a joy that had momentarily vanished resurfacing amidst the shared experience. They talked about their favorite hikes, places they dreamed of visiting, and what it meant to feel truly connected to nature. In that vast wilderness, a friendship began to bloom. The canyon transformed under the lantern's glow, shadows fading into shapes revealing hidden beauty, the intricate designs of the rocks, the soft blanket of stars above, and the soothing rhythm of the night. As they reached a clearing, Sarah felt compelled to stop. "Wait," she said, taking a deep breath. "Thank you." Tom turned his gaze toward her, his eyes sparkling with kindness. Life can be unpredictable. With each step, Sarah felt stronger, more grounded. Her mind began to lift from the fog, clarity seeping back in. She learned that darkness can only exist if there is light to fight against it. The hope they shared radiated warmth, battling the chill that still lingered in the air. Just ahead, the path veered to the right, leading toward a familiar sound, the babbling of a stream, the sound of water flowing. "That's it," Tom said, his voice rising with excitement. "That's where we need to go." Sarah felt a surge of freedom, a rush of emotion that made her want to shout with joy, with relief, with gratitude. She followed Tom, illuminating their way with the lantern's comforting glow. When they finally emerged from the dense canopy of trees, the world opened up before them. The night sky glittered above, a galaxy of stars welcoming them back to reality. Sarah took a moment to catch her breath, gratitude swelling inside her like a tidal wave. Tom pointed toward a faint sign just illuminated by the moonlight. "I can't believe we made it," she gasped, her heart pounding in disbelief. They stepped onto the path together, relief washing over them like the sweet scent of rain after a storm. But then Sarah turned to Tom, emotion spilling over. "I thought I was truly going to be lost. You saved me." He smiled, the soft light of the lantern casting a warm glow over his face. "No one deserves to be lost, not truly." As they walked down the trail, there was a comfort in their silence. Every sound felt different now, gentle rustling of leaves, the soft calls of night creatures, even the wind that danced through the branches. They made their way toward the parking lot where her car awaited, a sanctuary that sparkled like hope at the end of a long journey. When they reached the edge of the trail, anxiety and apprehension transformed into camaraderie and assurance that glowed brighter than the moon above. "Thank you, Tom. I'm not sure how to repay you," she offered sincerely, knowing she owed him more than words could express. He chuckled softly, shrugging off the praise. "Just remember this moment." They exchanged numbers, a way to remember the moment that bound them together, a fate intertwined in the very heart of the canyon. As Sarah got in her car, she looked back one last time, the silhouettes merging with the landscape, and felt a warmth spread through her heart. There had been darkness, fear, and uncertainty, but through it all, she had found resilience and friendship in the most unexpected place. The canyon was no longer just a place of fear. It had become a story of survival, a testament to the light that can guide us through the darkest of times. With a heart full of gratitude, she smiled, knowing she would never truly be lost again. She had never felt so small, standing on the edge of the canyon, the sheer rock faces looming like ancient giants ready to swallow her whole. Sarah glanced down at her phone one last time, hoping for a signal that never came. The sun was dipping low in the sky, casting long shadows that danced ominously across the terrain. Just hours before, this place had felt like an adventure waiting to unfold. Now it was a living nightmare. It all started as a fun day hike, a chance to escape the chaos of city life and breathe in the crisp mountain air. Sarah had been with friends, excited and carefree as they mapped their path through the winding trails. But when she lagged behind to snap a picture of a stunning view, the laughter of her friends faded into the distance. One wrong turn and she was alone, a needle in a haystack of endless rock and scrub. Now, as the last rays of sunlight filtered through the canyon, panic surged through her. "Stay calm," she whispered to herself. But the more she wandered, the more disoriented she became. The paths twisted and turned like serpents, each fork in the road a decision that pulled her deeper into the labyrinth of stone. Night fell quickly. The horizon swallowed the light, turning it into a complete darkness that enveloped her like a thick blanket. In the quiet, she could hear her heartbeat pounding in her ears, amplified by the isolation. Every rustle of leaves or crunch of gravel made her jump, her imagination spiraling as shadows turned into figments of fear. She thought, the weight of despair pressing down on her chest. She had packed light, just a water bottle and a granola bar, but neither would last long. The chill of night crept in. She realized she was not just lost, she was truly vulnerable. The canyon, once vibrant with life, now felt ominous and threatening, every rock and crevice shrouded in mystery. "Think, Sarah," she urged herself. She remembered her father's voice during family camping trips. He taught her to stay put when lost, to conserve energy and resources. "Don't wander," he said, but the primal instinct to move, to escape, tugged at her like a parent calling a child home. She took a deep breath, staring into the darkness around her, letting the cold air fill her lungs. It felt like the canyon was taking a deep breath too, holding its secrets close. With trembling hands, she flicked on her flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness just enough to reveal rocky ground and thick shadows. She felt a flash of determination. But as she turned, she felt the gnawing doubt creeping back. What if nobody found her? What if no one even knew she was missing? Hours passed like minutes. The night stretched endlessly before her. Sarah moved cautiously, each footfall creating whispers in the stillness. She focused on the sounds of the night, trying to connect with the wild. Somewhere out there, she thought, was a chance, a way back to safety. But as fatigue settled and her legs heavy, her mind foggy hope began to wane. In the dark, she heard something, a soft sound against the wind, almost like a voice. For a brief moment, her heart quickened. She called out, her voice breaking the silence, echoing back to her as though the canyon itself had taken up her plea. There was no response, just the rustling of leaves hung heavy in the air. Then, just as despair began to cloud her mind, a soft glow flickered in the distance. It was barely noticeable, but enough to send a jolt of adrenaline through her veins. The light beckoned her like a lighthouse calling a ship home, and she moved towards it, desperation fueling her steps. As she drew closer, the light expanded, revealing a figure silhouetted against the glow-tall with a lantern that shone bright against the gloom. He shouted, his voice deep and soothing, slicing through the suffocating darkness. Sarah felt tears threaten to spill from her eyes. She cried out, relief flooding her as she stumbled into the warmth of the light. "It's okay," he said, his tone calm and reassuring. He took a step closer, the lantern illuminating his face, a rugged man with a kind expression, eyes that spoke of understanding and compassion. "I'm Tom," he introduced himself, his voice steady. The warmth of his presence surrounded her like a protective cloak, easing the grip of panic that had tightened around her. "I don't know how I ended up here," she stammered, her heart racing. "It happens more often than you think," Tom replied, nodding knowingly. "This canyon has a way of disorienting people, but don't worry, we'll find a way out." The darkness around them faded, filled with the gentle glow of the lantern. With each step, Sarah felt her fears begin to lessen. She was no longer alone in this vast wilderness. She had found a companion. The warmth of Tom's lantern illuminated not just their path, but also the flickering hope in her heart. As they moved, the canyon began to open around them. What felt like a suffocating maze transformed into rolling hills and sprawling views. The once oppressive shadows shifted into shapes of wonder. "It's beautiful," she murmured, finally allowing herself to take it all in. "It is," Tom agreed, glancing at her with a smile. They walked in comfortable silence, sharing bits of their lives as they traversed the rocky terrain. Sarah opened up about her love for hiking, the thrill of adventure, and the lessons she had learned from her father about safety in the wild. Tom shared stories of his own, of past hikes and the storms he had encountered, each tale punctuated by laughter or moments of reflection. Sarah felt a sense of camaraderie blossom between them, something that transcended the fear of the previous hours. The lantern's glow felt like a metaphor, reminding her of the light that can be found in even the darkest situations. Moments later, a soft rustle interrupted their stories. She asked, her voice suddenly sharp with concern. "Yeah, but it's probably just a deer or a rabbit," Tom reassured her. "Let's hope you're right," she replied with a nervous laugh, her fear subsiding as quickly as it had emerged. Suddenly, they reached a ridge that overlooked the canyon, a breathtaking view that revealed a silver ribbon of a river winding through the landscape. The moon hung low, casting its soft light over the world below. They paused to take it in, the moment stretching out like a sigh of relief. "It's incredible," she said, awestruck by the beauty that spread before them. "It is," Tom echoed, a fondness in his eyes. As they moved again, the lantern illuminated the trail ahead, guiding them through the rocky maze. Sarah felt a growing sense of gratitude, grateful for Tom, for the beauty of the world around her, and for the lessons learned in the depths of darkness. She realized this journey wasn't just about finding her way back, it was about discovering her strength, resilience, and the beauty of human connection. They trekked through the night, sharing stories and banter, each step filled with new camaraderie. "You're taking this all surprisingly well," Tom remarked slyly. "Maybe it's the company," Sarah teased back, tossing him a playful glance. "You know, in moments like these, it's easy to discover who we truly are." "Wise words," she nodded. As the hours passed, the first hints of dawn began breaking over the horizon, painting the sky in soft pastels. With each step away from the night, Sarah felt lighter, the burdens of fear and panic slowly retreating. "I can't believe we're almost there," she said, excitement bubbling within her. "Just a little further," Tom assured her, the lantern flickering as they crested another rise. With the sun rising behind them, the world transformed. The canyon, now bathed in hues of gold and orange, felt alive. The whisper of the wind through the trees was a song, a celebration of resilient spirits finding their way back home. Sarah took a deep breath, feeling grateful for every moment that had led her here. Then, like a stroke of divine intervention, they came upon the main trail. It stretched like a lifeline, familiar and inviting. Sarah gasped, her heart leaping. She exclaimed, disbelief flooding her veins. Tom smiled, the lantern still glowing warmly between them, a symbol of their shared journey. "You did it," he said, pride shining in his eyes. "You were never truly lost." Tears of relief filled her eyes as they stepped onto the path. "Thank you," she whispered, the words carrying an emotional weight that spanned the entire journey. "It's what we do," Tom replied simply, his kindness echoing through the air around them. "Just remember, you're stronger than you think." They reached the trailhead where Sarah's car was parked, feeling the ache of exhaustion mixed with the exhilaration of survival. She turned to Tom, who had been her lantern in the darkness, a beacon of hope when she needed it most. She asked, her voice hopeful. "Absolutely," he smiled, pulling out his phone. They exchanged numbers, a simple connection that felt monumental in the grand scheme of their adventure. As she started her car, Sarah looked back at the canyon, a place that had tested her but also taught her about resilience and the importance of human connection. No longer was it a looming figure of fear, it was a part of her story, a chapter filled with growth. With the engine humming, Sarah drove off, the sun now fully rising to greet the day. And in that moment, she realized that sometimes, even when lost, you can find your way, if only you have someone to light the path. She stood at the edge of the canyon, the vastness unfolding like a monstrous wave about to crash down upon her. Sarah's heart raced as she peered into the deep shadows below, feeling increasingly small in the face of such raw beauty and peril. Just hours earlier, she had been giddy with excitement, reveling in the stunning vistas that surrounded her, but now the thrill had evaporated, leaving behind a gnawing dread that twisted in her gut. The words slipped from her lips, carried away by the wind as if the canyon itself were swallowing her despair. She had fingers of sunlight clinging to her as she marched bravely down the trail, but somewhere along the way, she had taken the wrong turn, the cheerful laughter of her friends fading into the background, their voices mere echoes etched in her memory. That sense of adventure had turned into a gnashing fear biting at her heels. It was as if the ground beneath her was shifting, playing tricks, disorienting her at every turn. The colorful rocks that once gleamed in daylight now loomed like giants, each twist and fold of the canyon masking what should have felt familiar. Panic began to wrap around her throat like a vice. "Breathe, Sarah." She could almost hear her father's voice in her head, calming and steady. But instincts can fray when you're miles deep in a wilderness that offers no map and no signs. She turned on her flashlight, the beam cutting through the darkening twilight. Shadows danced around her, creating a sense of movement that made her skin crawl. Every snap of a twig made her heart leap. What lurked in those shadows? A sense of vulnerability washed over her. She was a lone figure in a landscape that felt uncaring, even hostile. Hours passed, or were they days? The sun had slipped away entirely, replaced by a yawning darkness that felt suffocating. She pulled her jacket tighter around herself, hoping to shield against the bite of the chilly wind. The canyon echoed her loneliness, amplifying her doubts until they grew monstrous and overwhelming. "Maybe if I find a high point, I can see my way back," she muttered, determination battling against despair. But as the air grew colder, the shadows morphed and paths obscured themselves. Confusion descended fully upon her. She felt lost, not just in the wilderness, but within herself. Every instinct screamed at her to keep moving, to escape the confines of the dark. A thought flickered through her mind. She should be careful not to panic, but as she stumbled forward, fatigue began to take hold. The flashlight's beam flickered, a cruel reminder of her dwindling hope. She fumbled in her pocket for her phone, praying for a signal, but there was nothing, just a lifeless screen reflecting her fear. No one knew where she was, no one could rescue her. Then, just as despair threatened to engulf her, Sarah caught a glimmer in the distance. A flicker of light only a few feet away, illuminating the darkness like a beacon. It was small yet persistent. Her voice felt small against the enormity of the canyon. The flickering light grew brighter as she approached. She shouted, her voice trembling. A voice came back, and it was like a lifeline thrown into the stormy seas of her fear. Emerging from the shadows, a man stood with a lantern in hand, its glow expanding to chase the darkness away. "I'm Tom," he said, his face illuminated and revealing features marked by kindness and an air of determination. "Thank God," Sarah breathed, tears springing to her eyes. "You're not alone anymore. We'll figure this out together," Tom assured her, stepping closer. As he held the lantern aloft, its warm light chased away the cold tendrils of fear that had wrapped around Sarah. She felt her breathing slow, the weight of panic lifting ever so slightly. "Thank you," she managed to say, feeling gratitude swell in her chest. Tom asked gently, encouraging her to share her ordeal. "I was hiking with friends, but I took a wrong turn to take pictures. Then, it happens more than you think," he replied, the sincerity in his voice steadying her heart. "The canyon can be deceptive. Tell me about it," she replied with a nervous laugh. She couldn't help but feel a spark of camaraderie with this stranger. They were two souls trapped in this labyrinth, united by the flickering light of his lantern. As they began to walk together, Sarah felt an unfamiliar mixture of fear and hope stirring within her. The shadows around them felt less threatening when illuminated by Tom's lantern. With every step, her spirit seemed to lift, bolstered by the presence of another human. In this moment, she was letting go, embracing the unexpected journey ahead. She asked, curious about the man who had pulled her from the brink of despair. "The sense of freedom," Tom replied, his voice thoughtful. "Being surrounded by nature, away from the noise of the world." Sarah nodded, feeling the truth in his words. "I love that too." "Yes, they can," he agreed, glancing back at her, the lantern swaying gently in the night. "You need to respect nature." As they traversed the rocky trails, the canyon began to reveal its beauty again instead of evil. Shadows shifted shape in the lantern's light, and towering cliffs loomed above, bathed in silvery moonlight. They moved in a comfortable silence, broken only by soft laughter and occasional shared stories of past adventures. "Once I got caught in a flash flood while hiking in the mountains," Tom shared, raising an eyebrow as if he were inviting her into his memory. "It felt like the very ground beneath me was trying to wash me away. But then I remembered, storms don't last forever. I found cover and waited it out." "Absolutely," Sarah nodded, captivated by his perspective. With each story shared, Sarah felt a growing bond between them. The simple act of walking together under the soft glow of the lantern felt like a reassuring light side by side in the dark depths of the canyon. But just as hope began to blossom, distant sounds crept back into Sarah's awareness. A rustling, something moving in the underbrush nearby. Anxiety surged. She whispered, straining her ears. Tom stopped and listened, the lantern illuminating his focused expression. "Probably just a rabbit or deer. They'll steer clear of us," he comforted her. Her heart pounded as they resumed walking, again engulfed by the shadows around them. Sarah gripped the edge of her jacket, trying to clamp down on her rising fear. It's easy to project fears on the unknown, she thought, a psychological reality that often leads to heightened anxiety. Alone, she might have spiraled, but with Tom, she found herself grounded. As they continued on, they crested a rocky ridge that opened up to a stunning view, the canyon sprawling before them, a tapestry of shadows and stars glimmering high above. "Wow," she whispered, taken aback by its beauty. Tom smiled, sharing the moment with her, the lantern held high. "I never imagined I'd find comfort in the midst of darkness," Sarah admitted, feeling a profound sense of relief wash over her. "Of course, we help one another out in life, just as you're helping me," he replied sincerely. Eventually, they reached an open area beside a gentle stream, the soft sound of water flowing calming the tension that had settled over her like a weight. The stars above twinkled like diamonds against velvet, and Sarah felt an overwhelming sense of peace envelop her. "It's beautiful here," she said, looking around. "Nature has a way of reminding us of what really matters," Tom said, his voice echoing with wisdom. They stood together, hearts beating in tandem with the rhythm of the stream. Sarah suggested, her legs weary from the journey. She settled on a smooth rock, feeling the coolness of the stone ground her. "Great idea," Tom agreed, joining her. They sat in silence for a while, immersed in the tranquility of their surroundings. "Sometimes silence can say so much," Sarah reflected, surprised by how serene she felt even after everything. "Very true," Tom replied thoughtfully, staring up at the stars. As they lingered, Sarah thought about how lost she had felt just hours before and how far they had come together. The connection forged between them was significant, as fragile yet powerful as the light flickering in the lantern. But the delicate balance of calm began to shift as the night deepened. A sudden gust of wind sent a shiver down her spine, and the lantern flickered ominously. "We should probably move on," she said, standing up and brushing off her jeans. "Agreed," Tom said, sensing the urgency in her voice as he picked up the lantern. Together, they resumed their journey, the shadows shifting as the light danced in rhythm with their steps. "Follow me," he instructed, leading her along the edge of the stream. The light from the lantern flickered playfully on the water's surface, creating a magical effect. With each passing moment, the beauty of the canyon transformed from foreboding to enchanting. Sarah felt her fears retreat like distant whispers, replaced by a sense of adventure. Navigating through the terrain, she held on to the idea that they would find the path back together. The pair continued to talk about their lives, their dreams and fears, sharing laughter and stories that knitted a tapestry of connection. "Right, from lost in the canyon to newfound friendship," Sarah added, her heart happy despite the lingering sense of uncertainty. With their spirits high, they pressed on, discovering a trail that began to feel familiar. Sarah exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Tom held the lantern higher, illuminating the way as they moved quickly over the newly revealed trail. The light felt like hope, a tangible force that propelled them towards safety. And just like that, as they rounded a bend, the landscape shifted. There, illuminated by the dawning day, was the trailhead, an unexpected sight that sent a surge of joy through her entire being. She shouted, her voice full of disbelief as she laughed. Tom turned to her, his smile wide and contagious. "Thank you," she said earnestly, her heart swelling with gratitude. "The lantern would have been dim without your spirit, Sarah," he replied, a hint of seriousness underlying his lighthearted tone. As they reached the trailhead, Sarah felt an overwhelming sense of relief wash over her. She turned to Tom, their unspoken bond palpable. She asked, sincerity ringing in her voice. "Absolutely," he replied, pulling out his phone. They exchanged numbers, the simple connection signaling a new chapter in their lives. But as Sarah climbed into her car, she turned back one last time, taking in the place that had challenged her and brought her newfound clarity. The canyon had tested her spirit, but it had also forged an unexpected friendship, teaching her that even in the darkest places, light can guide you back home. With her heart full, she drove away, the sun finally breaking free from behind the horizon, illuminating the world in shards of hope and possibility. And in that moment, she knew she would never forget the journey, nor the lantern that had lit her way through the darkness. The sun had vanished behind the towering cliffs of the canyon, leaving Sarah in an eerie twilight. She had headed out on what she thought would be a simple day hike, eager to explore the stunning landscape with her friends. But now, as shadows wrapped around her like a heavy cloak, the thrill of adventure felt like a cruel joke. Sarah muttered to herself, glancing down at her phone again, praying for a signal that never came. Hours earlier, laughter and chatter had surrounded her, but now her own voice echoed back, a reminder of her isolation. She had lagged behind to capture the golden hues of the sunset reflecting off the rocks, and in that moment of distraction, her friends had faded into the distance farther away than she could have imagined. As darkness deepened, the canyon transformed. The vibrant colors of the day slipped away, replaced by ominous shadows that danced and flickered. Each rustle of leaves set her heart pounding. She brushed a hand against the stony wall of the canyon, feeling for guidance, but any sense of direction escaped her. "I can't be lost," she whispered, as if denying her situation could change it. Panic surged within her, threatening to spill over. She took a deep breath, trying to ground herself. "Okay, Sarah." Memories of her father's voice came back to her, the same reassuring tones he used during camping trips when she was scared. Stay calm. But what could she control in this moment of encroaching darkness? The air turned cold, sending chills down her spine. She flicked on her flashlight, its weak beam struggling against the dark. It illuminated only small patches of ground, each flicker revealing the jagged rocks that surrounded her. With every passing minute, her hope for rescue faded. The weight of solitude pressed down, heavy and suffocating. After what felt like hours of wandering, Sarah stumbled upon a small ledge. She settled onto the cold rock, fatigue pulling at her limbs. She fished a half-eaten granola bar from her bag and nibbled on it, grappling with despair as she watched the stars blink awake in the night sky. This isn't how it was supposed to go, she thought, frustration bubbling inside her. A noise interrupted her thoughts. It was faint, almost like a whisper carried on the wind. She called, her voice trembling. There was no answer. Only the haunting echo of her own words drifted back to her, a sobering reminder of her isolation. Each minute felt like an eternity as she sat there, the darkness pressing in closer. Thoughts spiraled as she imagined the worst wild animals, getting sick, never seeing her family again. She couldn't help but feel that she had entered a nightmare with no escape. Then suddenly she saw it, a flicker of light far down the trail. It was small, almost a tease beneath the dark canopy, but it felt like a lifeline. Her voice broke as she called out, stepping off the ledge and hurriedly making her way toward the glimmering light. Her heart raced with hope. Maybe it was someone searching for her. As she rounded a bend, the warm glow grew brighter, revealing a figure standing calmly with a lantern held high. The light chased away the shadows, illuminating the soft dirt path beneath their feet. The figure called out. Sarah stumbled, her voice thick with emotion. "Don't worry," the man said, his voice steady. "I'm Tom." The moment their eyes met, something shifted within Sarah. Relief washed over her like a warm wave. "Thank you," she whispered, her breath hitching. She felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes, a blend of fear and relief flooding in. Tom stepped forward, the lantern casting a gentle glow that suddenly made everything seem less threatening. "Let's get you out of here," he said, his tone calm and reassuring. As they began to walk together, Sarah felt a flicker of hope. This stranger had become her ally in an unfamiliar world. Tom asked, casting a glance her way. "I was hiking with friends, but I lost track of them," she replied, matching his pace. "I thought I could find my way back, but..." A wave of frustration washed over her, accompanied by the sting of embarrassment. "It can happen to anyone," Tom assured her. "The canyon can be very deceptive." As they moved cautiously along the path, Sarah felt the tension in her body begin to release. Being with Tom, illuminated by the warm lantern light, made her environment feel less hostile. "It's funny how quickly fear can take hold," she said, glancing up at him. "I've done plenty of hikes before. It's easy to let fear guide us when we're in unfamiliar territory," he replied thoughtfully. She smiled, encouraged by his words. They continued walking, sharing stories, the rhythm of their feet on the uneven ground easing the weight of their worries. She asked, eager to learn more about him, honestly. "The sense of adventure," Tom said, his voice filled with warmth. "Being out here away from it all gives me perspective." "That's exactly how I feel," Sarah said, surprised at how easily their conversation flowed. "Every adventure comes with its challenges," Tom said, glancing sideways at her. As they trod onward, the shadows began to change shape, revealing not just rock and sediment, but the intricate beauty of the canyon. It was a delicate dance of light and darkness, a reminder that even in the depths of fear, there is a world of unimaginable beauty waiting to be discovered. Suddenly, they heard a rustling sound nearby. Sarah stiffened, her heart racing again. She whispered, "Probably just a deer. They don't want anything to do with us," Tom said, his tone lighthearted. "I hope you're right," she replied, forcing a nervous laugh. Despite the levity in his words, the shadows loomed large around them. With Tom holding the lantern steady, they continued onward, their senses sharpened by the thick darkness surrounding them. And just as Sarah began to let go of her fears, they came to a clearing beside a gentle stream, its soft rippling sound breaking the silence. "This is lovely," Sarah said, pausing briefly to take in the sight. The moonlight shimmered on the water, creating a silvery pathway that felt inviting. "It is," Tom agreed, stepping closer to the stream. His words resonated deep within her. "It's easy to forget that when you're lost," she said softly, her hand brushing against the cool water. "A lot of people feel lost in their own lives too, not just in the wild," he noted, a hint of understanding in his voice. As they lingered at the edge of the stream, the coolness eased the tension in Sarah's shoulders. In that moment, she felt a palpable bond with Tom, forged from shared fears and the weight of the unknown. She asked, genuinely curious. "Part of it is that," he said, his eyes reflecting sincerity, "but it's also about facing fears, learning to embrace the unknown." Sarah nodded, filled with a newfound appreciation for their shared journey. The ideas of vulnerability and strength twined together in her mind, confronting fears out in the wild echoed challenges she faced in the world. As they prepared to leave the stream behind, Tom's lantern illuminated the path ahead. The ambience changed again, filled with the sounds of nocturnal creatures stirring in the underbrush. "We should keep moving," he said, leading the way, the glow of the lantern dancing upon the ground. "Absolutely," Sarah agreed, feeling her spirits lift. As they pressed onward, something in Sarah began to shift. The earlier feelings of despair faded further into the background, replaced by a determination to conquer both the wilderness and her fears. "It feels good to have hope again," she expressed, as much to herself as to Tom. "We all have moments where hope feels lost," he responded, glancing back at her. With each step, they ventured deeper into the unknown, the lantern lighting the way. Their conversation flowed freely, the tension from earlier now dissipating into laughter and shared stories. Tom described his own brush with fear, a moment from his past that had forever changed his perspective. "Once I camped in the mountains during a storm," he said, shaking his head as if recalling the memory vividly. "I thought I would be swept away by the winds. I sat there, drenched and terrified, until I realized I had a choice. I could panic, or I could remain calm and find shelter." The conviction he expressed ignited something in Sarah. "Maybe that's what this experience is teaching me," she reflected out loud. "Everything is about perspective." "Exactly," Tom affirmed, his expression serious but warm. As dawn began to break, a soft light crept over the canyon, casting a gentle glow that began to paint the landscape in hues of orange and pink. The beauty was breathtaking, and Sarah felt a rush of exhilaration. She exclaimed, gesturing to the vibrant sky unfolding like a canvas bursting with color. It was as if the horizon was celebrating their journey into the dawn, reminding them they had weathered the darkness together. "Nature can be therapeutic," Tom said, the lantern now silent, serving as a symbol of their shared strength and resilience. As they reached the final incline leading to the main trail, Sarah felt an overwhelming sense of accomplishment. The path opened up, revealing familiar landmarks, the gentle slope leading back to the parking lot, the distant voices she hadn't heard in days. She shouted, exhilaration bubbling inside her as she glanced at Tom. "You did all the hard work," he said with a smile, his eyes bright with encouragement. As Sarah stepped into the light of the parking lot, she paused to soak in the moment. The friends she'd lost were now visible in the distance, their worried faces reflecting relief as they rushed toward her. One of her friends, Lisa, shrieked, enveloping her in a hug. But Sarah only had eyes for Tom, who stood back, the lantern resting at his side, a guardian of her journey. "Thank you," she said, her voice filled with earnestness. "I was just helping light the way," he replied, his warm demeanor unchanged. As they exchanged contact information, she felt a sense of gratitude flood through her. This unexpected journey through fear and vulnerability had led her to a newfound friendship and awareness of her own bravery. The sun broke fully over the horizon, casting rays of golden light that danced around her as she climbed into her car. Before she left, she turned back once more, the canyon stretching out behind her like a whispered promise of adventure yet to come. In that moment, Sarah understood that sometimes getting lost can lead to unexpected paths, illuminating the strength that lies within us. With the gentle warmth of dawn behind her, she drove away, a survivor, a warrior shaped by the wilderness, no longer afraid of what lay ahead. She felt the last light of the day slip away like a thief in the night. The sun sank behind the jagged cliffs of the canyon, and as darkness wrapped around her, Sarah realized she was utterly alone. Last week, she had been filled with excitement as she planned this hiking trip with friends. Had laughed, taking pictures of the breathtaking views, unaware that just one wrong turn could lead to disaster. Now there was only silence and overwhelming, suffocating silence that enveloped her. A swirl of panic rose in her chest. She whispered into the void, her voice bouncing off the canyon walls. There was no reply, only the soft rustle of leaves swaying in the wind. She had underestimated the vastness of the canyon. The colors she had marveled at earlier were now mere shadows, lurking in the dark. "Stay calm," she told herself, her heart racing. But the truth was, she was scared, very scared. She checked her phone, no signal, just a blank screen with a tiny red battery icon flashing at her. If only she had paid more attention to her surroundings instead of getting lost in the beauty of this place. Taking a deep breath, Sarah steadied herself. But with disorienting twists and turns surrounding her, every direction felt the same. As the remnants of daylight disappeared, she felt the weight of darkness pressing in, a live creature ready to pounce. Each step echoed loudly in her ears, creating a symphony of fear. She pressed forward, clutching her flashlight like a lifeline. It flickered in response, illuminating only fractured pieces of the ground before her, a mix of rocks and loose gravel that tugged unpredictably at her footing. "I can't stay here," she thought, pushing her legs forward with a mixture of fear and determination. Hours passed, or maybe it was just an illusion of time in the overwhelming dusk. The shadows morphed and shifted like wicked spirits, and every rustle of grass turned her nerves into taut strings. What if anything was nearby, lurking just beyond the reach of her light? After what felt like an eternity, fatigue began to claw at her muscles. She found a large rock and sank down, breathing heavily. The cool air felt sharp against her skin. Her stomach growled, reminding her of the half-eaten granola bar buried in her backpack. Would it last? How long could she survive in this endless maze? She had never felt so desperately lost. "Think, Sarah, think," she encouraged herself, wiping the sweat from her brow. But as darkness settled fully around her, anxiety began to weave through her thoughts like a tangled thread. She closed her eyes, letting the fear wash over her, feeling its weight. But as the moon climbed higher in the sky, illuminating the canyon with an eerie glow, sleep was an elusive comfort. The world seemed to hold its breath, and she could almost hear her heartbeat drumming against the stone walls. She bit her lip, frustration mixing with despair, and just when she thought things couldn't get worse, she heard a sound, the soft rustle of leaves, much closer this time. She called, her voice trembling. Silence blanketed her. The stillness contained a hint of something primal, something that clawed at her insides. The dread of the unknown twisted her stomach into knots. What if she wasn't alone out here? Then she saw it, a flicker of light far in the distance, like a star in the abyss. It was slow, almost hesitant, but it grew brighter with each passing moment. Her breath hitched in her throat. Is it real? She stood, adrenaline rushing through her, pushing her toward the light. In those dark moments, hope became her only guide. As she moved closer, the figure that held the lantern came into view, a man silhouetted against the glow. He called, his voice steady and calm, breaking the silence like a warm breeze. She shouted, the words bursting forth in a rush. "I thought I'd never find someone." Relief flooded over her, a tide of emotions crashing like waves against a shore. "Follow me," he said, stepping closer, his lantern illuminating the path between them. It didn't matter that she was scared. He was a beacon of hope in her darkest moment. "I'm Tom," he introduced himself, his voice grounded and reassuring. "I'm Sarah," she replied, shaking, trying to dispel the remnants of fear that clung to her. As she stood beside him, she felt the tension in her shoulders begin to dissolve. The warmth of the lantern was more than just light, it was a lifeline. He asked, guiding her down a wider path. "I was hiking with friends, but I lost them," she explained, wiping away the remnants of panic. "Then I just wandered off." Tom nodded, understanding etched on his face. "The canyon can be tricky. One minute you're running toward adventure, and the next, you're lost," Sarah finished for him, the weight of the truth settling heavily. "Let's get you out," he assured her. Together they walked, the lantern casting long shadows that danced along the rocks. With each step forward, Sarah felt a flicker of determination inside her. As darkness surrounded them, she trusted Tom's light to guide them through. The sound of their footsteps echoed softly in the confines of the canyon, creating a rhythm that seemed to synchronize their hearts. She asked, eager to know this man who had come to her aid. "It's the thrill of the unknown," Tom replied, glancing back at her with a smile. "Every trail is different." "I've always loved that aspect," Sarah nodded, "but I guess I underestimated this trail." "We all have a tendency to overlook the small details," Tom remarked, his tone light but his eyes serious. The shadows swirled around them, but the lantern glowed ever brighter, revealing paths that twisted away into the darkness. As fear began to ebb, their conversation flowed like the gentle stream beside them, filled with laughter and shared stories. "I once got caught in a storm while hiking in the mountains," Tom said, his voice gradually becoming serious. "For a while I felt completely helpless, stuck with nothing but a dwindling fire to keep me safe." "That's a good metaphor for life," Sarah responded thoughtfully. "Sometimes it feels like I'm weathering a storm in my own life as well." "Absolutely," Tom agreed, nodding. "But it's in those moments of uncertainty that we find our true strength." They continued walking, the lantern casting a warm glow that felt like a lifeline. As they traversed the landscape, the towering rocks transformed from menacing to majestic, revealing intricate patterns under the gentle light. Sarah felt a renewed sense of wonder about the world around her, the same childlike curiosity she had lost over the years. Suddenly, a gust of wind sent a chill down her spine, and the lantern flickered ominously. "We should keep moving," Sarah urged, a sudden wave of apprehension rattling her composure. "Good idea," Tom responded, his eyes scanning the shadows, alert and aware. Together they pressed on, each footfall a steady reminder that they were in this together. As dawn began to break, the moon slipped away behind the horizon and the first hints of light filtered through the canyon. The landscape transformed, colors spilling forth and revealing a tapestry of beauty that had been hidden in the dark. "Look at that," Sarah marveled, pointing toward the brilliant orange and pink hues that colored the sky. Tom smiled, his voice warm. "Nature has a way of rewarding us for our perseverance." In that moment, Sarah felt a sense of camaraderie with Tom, two souls navigating through the wilderness, fighting fear together. It was a bond forged in the depths of vulnerability, a connection that felt both surprising and enriching. As they continued walking, Sarah became aware of a sound, the gentle rush of water nearby. She asked, directing her head towards the sound. "That's a stream," Tom said, guiding her closer. The sight of flowing water filled her with a renewed sense of hope. "It's amazing how something so simple can feel so refreshing," she said, the cool mist filling the air. "Just like that we can find our way back," Tom replied, glancing at her with a knowing smile. As they followed the sound of the water, the light brightened, filtering through the trees, revealing familiar shapes and contours of the canyon. Sarah felt a burst of excitement. Was she really almost there? She exclaimed, her heart racing with anticipation. "Just stay close to the water," Tom instructed, pointing down toward the stream. With newfound purpose, every step felt lighter as they made their way along the bank. The sun climbed higher, illuminating everything around them. Colors bloomed vibrant, tangible, just like her hope of returning home. When they finally emerged from the cover of the trees, the main trail lay before them, the parking lot just a short distance away. Sarah felt her heart swell with a rush of triumph. She shouted, exhilaration spilling out of her. Tom grinned, the same sense of accomplishment evident on his face. As they stepped onto the path, Sarah turned to Tom, her eyes shining with gratitude. "Thank you for everything." Tom shrugged, a modest smile gracing his lips. "You found your way," he said gently. She asked, uncertainty creeping in as she realized she didn't want this moment to end. "Absolutely," he replied, pulling out his phone to exchange numbers. Sarah felt a warmth fill her chest, a glimmer of something special born from their shared experience. As she climbed into her car, she turned to look back at the canyon one last time, a landscape that had challenged her, scared her, yet ultimately made her stronger. With a deep breath, she drove away, feeling gratitude wash over her. She realized that getting lost in the vast expanse of nature had led her to rediscover parts of herself she had forgotten. The canyon had brought her fears to light, but it had also illuminated the strength inside her. The rising sun marked the start of a new day, a canvas of endless possibilities filling the horizon. And in that moment, Sarah knew she would never again feel lost in life. She had discovered her inner light, ready to guide her through any darkness ahead. She stood on the rocky edge of the canyon, the sun dipping below the vast horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. For a moment, Sarah felt like she was on top of the world, her heart soaring with excitement. It had been her idea to hike this canyon, a stunning yet dangerous path that promised breathtaking views. But in a blink, that thrill twisted into something darker. She wondered aloud, glancing at her phone. The screen glowed dimly and showed no signal. Panic jolted her. "No service," she muttered, feeling her breath quicken. How had she lost track of time? She had come to escape the chaos of her life, only to find herself alone in the middle of nowhere. It wasn't just the thought of being lost that frightened her, it was the reality sinking in. She was alone. As the darkness crept in, it wrapped around her like a thick cloak, making her feel small and vulnerable. She remembered her friends laughing just hours ago, the way their voices echoed off the rock walls. Now all she could hear was the soft rustle of leaves and the quiet chirping of insects in the night, a symphony of solitude that filled her with dread. "Focus," she chanted to herself, trying to calm the thunder in her chest. But every direction looked the same in the fading light. The path had twisted and turned, just like the swirling thoughts in her mind. She had tried to follow the trail, but the rocks felt imposing and she lost her way. A chill ran down her spine as she peered into the blackness ahead. Shadows danced eerily against the canyon walls, and she could almost feel the weight of the dark closing in around her. can't stay here, she decided, pulling herself up from the ground. She gripped her flashlight tightly, flicking it on. Its beam cut through the darkness just enough to reveal the rocky terrain just in front of her. Each step felt heavy as she navigated rocks and fallen branches. She stumbled, catching herself just in time, but the slip robbed her of her breath and her confidence. She thought, her heart racing. Every snap of a stick behind her made her turn, fear prickling at her skin. The wilderness felt alive, full of unseen dangers, and she was the intruder. Eventually, her legs began to tire, fatigue seeping into her bones. She found a small ledge and sat down, pulling out a half-eaten granola bar from her backpack. Just one bite at a time, she told herself, but even that seemed like a struggle. She munched quietly, hoping for a spark of energy, but despair crept back in as she surveyed the darkness around her. As night settled in deeper, her fear began to morph into something tangible. She could feel it clawing at her heart, whispering doubts and worst-case scenarios into her ear. "You'll never make it out of here," it taunted. Trying to shake off the dread, she took a deep breath of the cool, crisp air, but it felt heavy with uncertainty. Sleep began to tug at her eyelids, but the thought of closing her eyes in this desolate place sent her heart racing again. Too afraid to sleep, she gripped the flashlight, keeping it steady. "I can't just sit here," she decided. She forced herself to rise again, pushing back against the suffocating fear that loomed. Suddenly, she heard a crack in the distance, a soft sound breaking through the silence of the night. Was it just the wind or something more ominous? She called out, her voice breaking the stillness, echoing through the canyon without anyone to hear it. Just when she thought she was truly alone, a flicker of light caught her eye, a distant glow, moving slowly through the darkness. She wondered, hope stirring within her. Heart pounding wildly, she followed the light, adrenaline coursing through her veins. The beam grew brighter until she could see a figure standing tall, holding a lantern. Relief washed over her like fresh rain as they made eye contact. The figure called, voice steadier than she felt. Sarah let out, her voice catching in her throat. The man stepped closer, lantern raised high. "You're not alone now." His voice was calm, reassuring, and suddenly the crushing weight of dread started to dissipate. "Thank you," she breathed, tears brimming in her eyes. It felt like hope had just reignited within her, a flame she feared had long since extinguished. "Let's get you out of here," Tom said, his presence sturdy and certain. He gestured for her to follow, leading her through the dark with his lantern illuminating the way. As they walked together, Sarah felt a flicker of determination igniting within her. She asked, matching his pace. "I was camping nearby. I heard some voices and figured I should check it out," he explained, glancing back with a reassuring smile. "Hiking can be unpredictable." Sarah nodded, grateful for his understanding. It wasn't just the physical danger she had faced. The emotional turmoil of being lost, of not knowing if she would see her friends again, had been overwhelming. She asked, wanting to know the man who had come to her rescue. "For me, it's about connecting with nature," Tom replied, the lantern's light reflecting in his eyes. "It's liberating to step away from reality and just be out here, surrounded by the beauty of the world." His words resonated within her. "I came to escape, to feel alive," she said, "but I felt so vulnerable." Tom echoed, eyebrows raised. "Almost 2 days," she admitted, feeling embarrassment wash over her. "I lost track of time." Tom frowned. "That's risky. Always remember to tell someone about your plans." "I know," she sighed, frustration blending with nervousness. "Underestimating the wilderness happens to the best of us," he said softly, reassuring her. With every step, her fears began to ebb, the shadows surrounding them transforming from ominous figures into beautiful, towering cliffs. The lantern was a beacon, guiding them through the night like a lighthouse steering a ship back to shore. As they journeyed together, Sarah felt emboldened. Here was a stranger who had lit the way in her darkest hour, a firm hand helping her find her footing once again. "Thank you for staying with me," she said, the heavy emotion in her heart becoming lighter with gratitude. "It's what we do for each other," Tom replied, his tone warm. They continued down the winding path, their footsteps synchronizing with the rhythm of the night. He asked, breaking the silence. "Not really," she said, her voice tinged with uncertainty. "But here you are," Tom interrupted, his voice firm yet gentle. "You've survived out here alone, facing the elements." Deep down, she knew he was right. Being lost had forced her to confront her own fears, not just of the wilderness. It felt like a necessary awakening. "I guess I didn't see it that way," she mused, feeling the weight of his words settle in. "Perspective is everything," Tom said, glancing back at her as he held the lantern high. In that moment, Sarah felt a spark of determination ignite within her. Tom was right, they were both navigating through darkness, and as long as the lantern burned bright, she had every reason to keep moving forward. Suddenly, a rustle in the bushes nearby made her jump. She breathed, fear flickering back. "Just an animal," Tom reassured her. "Probably a deer or something." His calm demeanor calmed her racing heart, and as they walked, they talked more about their lives. Tom shared stories of adventures he had taken, moments where he had faced challenges in nature. Sarah shared her struggles in her day-to-day life, where she often felt lost among the noise of people and expectations. "With each hike, I find a piece of myself," he said, voice steady. "I lost myself a bit in the daily grind," she admitted, feeling lighter with each confession. Exactly, Tom replied. By now, dawn began breaking in the distance, the horizon painted in soft pastels. As the first hints of sunlight broke through the canyon walls, it illuminated their surroundings like magic. The once oppressive shadows changed into friendly shapes, revealing the intricacies of the canyon that had been hidden in darkness. Sarah exclaimed, pointing toward a glimmer of light reflecting off a distant rock. Nature has a way of revealing her beauty slowly, Tom said, a smile spreading across his face. As they climbed higher, the sunlight warmed their faces, filling Sarah with renewed hope. The world around her felt expansive again. She could almost taste the freedom she had craved. Then they reached a ridge and looked down into the valley. Wow, Sarah breathed, taking it all in. Nature can be a harsh teacher, but she's also incredibly generous, Tom said, standing beside her. They savored the moment in silence, breathing in the fresh air, allowing the tranquility to wash over them. It was as if the universe had conspired to bring them together, each step leading her to this very moment. Eventually, they turned back toward the trail, the path widening before them as they climbed down carefully. Sarah felt a weight fall off her shoulders, replaced by gratitude. As they emerged from the trees, the familiar sight of the parking lot came into view. Just beyond it, she could see her friends, their worried faces lined with relief. Sarah shouted, the joy spilling over her like a river freed from a dam. Tom grinned, his lantern still aglow. You did it. Tears of relief filled her eyes as she turned to him, overwhelmed with gratitude. Thank you, Tom. It was a team effort, he replied, shining with warmth, but what you've accomplished is a testament to your strength. As she hugged him tightly, she felt the bond forged in those harrowing hours. They had journeyed through darkness, and together they had emerged under the light of a new day. Sarah took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her life settling back into a comfortable rhythm. She asked, longing to hold on to this connection. Definitely, he smiled, exchanging numbers quickly. With her heart full, Sarah climbed into her car and started the engine, her friends rushing toward her for warm embraces and kind words. But she turned back one last time, glancing over her shoulder to the canyon that had challenged her. It had reminded her that even in moments of despair, there are glimmers of hope waiting to be found. As she drove away, the sun fully emerged, illuminating the world in brilliant hues of warmth and possibility. That day, she had not only survived the canyon, she had rediscovered herself, and with Tom's lantern still lighting her way, she felt ready to face whatever came next. She stood at the edge of the canyon, heart pounding in disbelief as the sun dipped below the rugged cliffs. It felt like the world was closing in around her. What started as an adventurous hike had spiraled into a terrifying ordeal. Days had blurred into a haze of exhaustion and regret, pushing her to confront the grim reality that she was utterly lost. Sarah had come to the canyon with a sense of freedom, eager to escape her mundane routines. She had envisioned a day filled with laughter, the thrill of discovery alongside her friends. But when she stopped to take a photo, the joyous laughter faded into silence, the sound of her friends' voices swallowed by the expansive wilderness. In that moment of distraction, a single misstep had set a series of unfortunate events into motion, and Sarah found herself alone. Now, as the last light of day vanished, she felt the weight of the shadows creeping closer and closer. The warmth of the sun had given way to a chilling breeze that nipped at her skin. She wrapped her arms around herself, unwilling to let the panic take hold. Stay calm, she whispered, echoing the advice her father had given her on countless camping trips. But rational thoughts became harder to cling to as the darkness settled in deeper. She switched on her flashlight, the beam cutting through the thick night air only a few feet ahead. The jagged rocks loomed ominously, each one a menacing figure against a backdrop of endless blackness. Her heart raced with every sound, rustling leaves, branches snapping, and echoes that made her think she wasn't alone. The fear twisted in her stomach like a vice. Think, she urged herself again. She took a deep breath, letting it fill her lungs as she surveyed her surroundings. But awareness felt elusive as shadows danced around her, teasing her perception of reality. Desperation tugged at her. I need to find a trail, she muttered, scanning for a path illuminated by her weak beam of light. Nothing looked familiar, and the bitter chill dug deeper into her bones, reminding her of her vulnerability. She took a hesitant step forward, moving back into the dark, fighting against the mounting fear. Hours passed like an agonizing eternity. She moved, but it felt as if she were walking in circles. The reality of her isolation began to sink in. No food, limited water, and potentially no hope of rescue. The words ricocheted in her mind. Each thought spiraled deeper, each echo a reminder that she was utterly alone in an unforgiving landscape. Exhaustion clawed at her strength, forcing her to sit on a nearby rock. What should have felt like a moment of reprieve transformed into dread. The stars blinked above, distant and cold. Sarah pulled out a half-eaten granola bar, nibbling at the dry remnants while tears fell quietly. This wasn't the adventure she had imagined, it was a nightmare. With each passing minute, the shadows grew longer, stalking her like predators waiting to strike. A sound broke the stillness, a crack, a rustle, something moving closer. Her heart raced. She called out, the quiver in her voice apparent. Nothing answered except for the chilling wind that howled through the canyon. Then she saw it, a flicker of light in the distance, a golden glow cutting through the crushing darkness. Hope surged again, quickly battling the fear that threatened to engulf her. Was she dreaming? She shouted, her voice echoing as she stumbled toward the light, every step an act of desperation. As she drew closer, she realized there was indeed a figure standing tall, lantern in hand, illuminating the area around them. The stranger called, his voice steady and strong. Her words came pouring out, relief flooding through her as she stepped into the circle of light. I thought, you're not alone anymore, he reassured her, his kindness radiating. Thank you, she managed, tears of relief blurring her vision. The lantern's glow felt transformative, a warmth amidst the cold terror that had suffocated her for days. Let's get you out of here, Tom said, holding the lantern high as they started walking together. Sarah felt a flicker of hope return, mingling with gratitude. With each step, her world began to brighten, the shadows retreating slightly as the glow illuminated the path ahead. Tom asked, his gaze focused as they navigated the rocky terrain. I was hiking with friends, but I took a wrong turn. I thought I could find my way back, but I just got lost, she explained, the fear that had buried itself deep within her now bubbling to the surface. Getting lost happens more often than people realize, he said, his tone soothing. This canyon can be disorienting. Taking a deep breath, she nodded, grateful for his steady presence. They walked in silence for a few moments, and Sarah began to embrace her newfound companionship. The light from Tom's lantern felt like a beacon, a reminder that there was still hope in the darkest moments. She asked, intrigued by the man who had become her lifeline. It's about adventure for me, Tom replied, glancing sideways at her. Every journey reveals something new, something transformative. Fragile, she questioned, curious about his perspective. We often take our safety for granted. I think being immersed in nature reveals how small we truly are against the vastness of the world, he explained, his expression grim. At that moment, amidst the shadows, Sarah felt something shift inside her. Her situation was dire, but she was still here, still fighting. She was more than just lost. She was learning and evolving in unexpected ways. Suddenly, a rustle broke through their conversation, stirring the silence. Sarah's heart jumped again. Panic clawed back into her voice. Probably just an animal. We're safe if we stick together, Tom assured her, though the tension in his expression told another story. They continued ahead, the lantern casting flickering shadows, creating an almost magical atmosphere around them. She asked, eager to keep the fear at bay. Tom hesitated, then opened up. Once I got caught in a storm while hiking in the mountains. The winds howled and I felt completely powerless. I realized that in those moments it's easy to buckle. She admired his resilience. That's profound, she said softly. Yes, but it's how we choose to confront those storms that truly matters, he replied, glancing at her with a hint of seriousness. They were both navigating their own storms, and she felt a deep connection building between them. As they walked further, the winding path opened up to a stunning view, a panoramic vista of the night sky filled with shimmering stars. Sarah exclaimed, astonished by the beauty. Nature has a way of taking our breath away, even amid darkness, Tom said, holding the lantern higher as if lighting their way through the vast expanse above. Feeling inspired, Sarah opened up about her life back home, the weight of expectations, the constant noise of city life. I come out here to find myself, she admitted. But now I realize it's more than just being outside. That's the spirit, Tom encouraged, his eyes reflecting the lantern's warm glow. Each moment, good or bad, is a part of our journey. The conversation flowed effortlessly, building a sense of camaraderie that felt surreal. Slowly, the weight they each carried began to lighten. Just as Sarah was feeling the warmth of connection, another rustle echoed in the trees nearby, sharper this time. She whispered, tension returning like a quicksilver jolt. Tom paused and listened, every muscle taut. It's okay. It's probably just wildlife, he said, though the uncertainty in his voice made her heart race. The hairs on the back of Sarah's neck stood up. Maybe we should keep moving, she suggested, trying to mask her fear. Good call, he agreed. They resumed their trek, the lantern's glow pushing back against the shadows, attempting to close in around them. As they ventured deeper into the canyon, the landscape changed subtly, revealing twisting paths and hidden crevices. The freezing wind began to howl, and she noticed Tom shivering beside her. She asked, concern flooding her voice. Yeah, just cold, he replied, stifling a shiver. She asked, pulling it from her backpack without waiting for a response. She wrapped it around him, her determination to help pushing aside her own fears. Thanks, he replied, warmth flooding his eyes. You're strong. The compliment sparked warmth within her, but as they pressed on, they both heard a louder rustling, this time accompanied by a low growl. Fear pierced through her like ice-cold water. Sarah gasped, stepping back instinctively. Tom's expression shifted from calm to serious. Stay close to me, he commanded, shifting the lantern toward the sound. The glow flickered and danced wildly as they approached the source of the noise. Is it a bear? Panic rose in Sarah's throat. She imagined tales of hikers who had lost their lives in the wilderness, the stories that rushed through her mind, painting horrifying pictures. Tom stepped forward, shielding her slightly. He raised the lantern higher, trying to peer into the darkness. "I don't know what it is, but we must stay calm," he urged, though she could hear the tension in his voice. Before they could react, a shadow dashed past them, quick and unexpected. Sarah's heart pounded fiercely, adrenaline coursing through her veins. She exclaimed, eyes wide with fear. Tom looked back at her, determination etched on his face. "Think it through. I don't want to find out," Sarah murmured, fear gripping her in a vice, but Tom's courage pulled her forward. "We need to find out." They moved carefully toward the immediate area of disturbance, tension thick in the air. Suddenly, out of the shadows, a pair of glowing eyes reflected the lantern's light, staring right at them, unyielding and wild. She whispered, her heart racing. "I don't know," Tom said gingerly. The eyes blinked slowly, and she could hear the sound of low growling again. She felt her throat close, the weight of fear becoming unbearable. Would they encounter a wild animal tonight? Had she truly ventured into a situation that went beyond anything she had prepared for? And then in the dim light, she caught a glimpse of the creature, a mountain lion, poised and tense, waiting. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. "Tom, we need to back away," she urged, stepping backward instinctively. But just as they turned, the growl became louder, echoing around them like thunder, surrounding them in a menacing atmosphere. Time stood still, a nightmarish tableau caught between fear and the survival instinct that ignited within them. "Back away slowly," Tom instructed, the lantern shaking slightly in his grip, illuminating the powerful figure before them. As they stepped back, the lion regarded them, its muscles tensed, poised to pounce. Would they both make it out alive, or had they wandered into the jaws of danger? In that heart-stopping moment, as the darkness loomed heavy around them and the lantern flickered, she realized something terrifying. Their fates hung delicately in the balance, caught between the predator and the light. Seconds felt like hours, and the wilderness seemed to hold its breath, waiting for something to break the tension. A choice, a moment, a flicker of hope amidst the rising fear.